and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. In this episode, I'll be discussing the 2006 horror thriller movie and sequel Saw 3, as directed again by Darren Lynn Bousman, who indeed directed the second movie in the series, 2005's Saw 2. So, as per my review for the last two movies in the franchise, I will issue the same disclaimer. What I would say is that if you haven't watched Saw 3 specifically, or to be honest, any other movie in the franchise, then I wouldn't watch this review. Now, I'm going to try and keep it as spoiler-free as I can, but by insinuation, I may end up giving something away, and this is a film you need to watch, first off, to be fair, without knowing what's going to happen. Indeed, very much can be said for all of the other films in this series. So, if this does apply to you, switch off now, but do please come back to SciFirst MovieTalk and let me know what you thought of the film. I would be very interested to know. But okay, for those that you're staying, are we ready? So, Saw 3, then, sees the return of the notorious Jigsaw Killer, aka John Kramer, as played again by Tobin Bell. It sees him return basically with his gruesomely engineered games to test the very fabric of our being and our will to survive. I thought I was going to best out a song then, but anyway, the film sets off basically right where everything was left off in Saw 2. Detective Eric Matthews, as played by Donnie Wahlberg, has basically lost his game to save his son and found himself trapped in the dungeon featured in the first movie. We had found Amanda Young, as played by Shawnee Smith, working with the infamous Jigsaw after surviving his test in the first movie too. We then find Jigsaw in basically the last hours of his life, playing one final game with Jeff, as played by Angus Macfadyen, Macfadyen, who is basically holding on to his grief for his son, who was basically killed in a hit-and-run accident by, hit-and-run driver, but basically who was left off unpunished. Jeff considers revenge against those that have wronged him, which basically Jigsaw hands him on a plate, pitting him in a series of challenges where, to save somebody who had a hand in the hit-and-run driver, to let them go free. Including the driver himself, Jeff has to really give a piece of himself, both physically and emotionally, in a test to see whether or not he can let go of his hate and learn to forgive, in, of course, the most extreme circumstances, of course. Meanwhile, a separate game is actually being played involving Jigsaw himself in a fight to keep him alive for the duration of Jeff's tasks. Amanda enlists, shall we say, the services of Lynn, as played by, apologies for this one, Bahar Soomekh, basically a surgeon who has a questionable bedside manner, who has to test her will to keep somebody alive. Otherwise, she herself will fall victim to Jigsaw's ruthless methods. So, right from the very start, you can see that for this movie, they have upped the ante tenfold to kind of bring us something with enough twists and turns and multiple story threads, enough to make your own head explode, to be quite fair. There is so much going on in this film, and even more if you actually watch the series in full, with this movie almost acting both as a fantastic finale to what was, all told, a pretty decent trilogy, whilst also serving to set up at least the next film in the series, which upon first watching happens right under your nose, with a number of real kind of sleight of hand gestures which don't become apparent until the fourth movie in the series. This movie goes straight for the gore. It's more prominent in this entry than the previous two movies put together, and whereas the other two kind of shy away from such elements at times, if you do consider them in terms of the Saw franchise as a whole, this one gets you right up close and personal, being a lot more about, being a lot more adult in places, that's what I wanted to say. You can certainly tell they were kind of pushing the boundaries to what would be considered acceptable, continuing a trend set by the previous two movies, of course. Now, whilst this one is not for the faint of heart, it actually weaves quite a more intricate web, shall we say, than the previous two movies. And yes, admittedly, it is very gruesome. The film has more than its fair share of stomach-churning and certified look-away moments. No arguments from me there at all. It actually concentrates on its story in a very much bigger way, particularly more than Saw 2 does in this respect. We actually concentrate on Jigsaw this time around, for the most part, and kind of examine more of his backstory and relationship with Amanda. And although we do see him in a weakened state, and although he doesn't really move for the entire film, apart from some flashback moments, he is still on top form. As, you know, once again, is Tobin Bell, to be fair, who is just Jigsaw, if you kind of know what I mean. I think it's that voice and the implication of the evil that makes him so menacing, because you never actually see him do anything. You know, once again, very delectable. Shawnee Smith also brings quite a bit of depth to the character of Amanda, and together there is some real on-screen chemistry between Bell and Smith that really sets their relationship alive. Again, very intricate, unbalanced, and with Amanda being very codependent on John. And we do get to see this relationship as it kind of dissolves in the process of John dying, with explosive consequences for them all and all around. It is more involved than the previous two entries, but this does come at a price. It is much longer, about 20 minutes longer, if I'm correct, than its predecessors. And if I'm honest, it does tell in places. It is nowhere near as punchy and lulls quite badly in places. Admittedly, the story is intriguing enough, all told, but you can feel its additional runtime, which is a bit of a shame overall. But then there is just so much going on that the filmmakers obviously thought that this was the only way to kind of get everything across that they wanted to do. When the film does actually get moving, it does so in a more evolved manner, shall we say. The gore, the storytelling, the traps themselves, the visual style, the characters, all have a presence to them that feels a lot more polished, more rounded than its predecessors, more ingenious, and more thought out as to how this film not only delivers in its own plot, but how intricate it fits into Jigsaw's overall story. A nice element of this movie was actually getting to see how some of the traps and the stories which played out in the first movie were actually set up, which was a really nice touch. The characters themselves have more involvement in the plot as well overall, and indeed, those actually chosen to play Jigsaw's macabre games are not just simply running around frailing their arms about and screaming, which does get annoying fast, to be fair. There is plenty of involvement in the games themselves, and in a way, everything seems more educated, even though it does, admittedly, go straight for the jugular, you know? The plot, the characters, and the entire framework of this movie seems more like a tight-fitting jigsaw, if you know what I mean, itself, with a number of really subtle clues overall as to the big finale, which I must say is more understated and less pushed than that of the second movie. And whilst not on a par with the shock value of the first, it feels more earned this time around. It doesn't work so hard to try and throw us a big twist, but in doing so, it does actually deliver nonetheless. There is more of the human element, shall we say, this time around, bringing the audience a connection with somebody who has suffered a tragic loss, which is both a brave move, considering that much of the film like this is merely drawn for shock value, to be fair, and gruesome entertainment, but also a thought-provoking one, asking moral questions on revenge and seeking to examine just how much one can forgive when faced with an opportunity they had long since sought, asking all of us, what would you do? Could you forgive and go through the pain yourself, physical and emotional, to save somebody who has wronged you? So, overall, Saw 3 is a decent entry into the overall franchise. Acting, I think, is a linchpin, a bridge, if you like, between what had kind of gone before and what was yet to come, even if we didn't know at this time, of course. Everything about this film is more evolved than its predecessors, with a more intricate plot, a number of simultaneous games actually being played, and even a more edgy kind of soundtrack. Basically, damn, that theme tune. I was humming it again for days. But again, brought to us again by Charlie Clouser, who also penned the music for the first two films. This time, Jigsaw is a part of the game in a very unique way, showing us just what he's made of, his own will to survive, and that's quite important, I think, in quite an intimate and very stomach-churning but disgustingly brilliant way, shall we say. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. We've absolutely loved having you here at SciFirst MovieTalk. We would definitely love to have you back. But most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.